Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to this session. We're going to really be examining one of the miraculous things from the state of Israel, and it really is the innovation. If you think about Israel as a country, we really do think about it as the miracle country. There's so many amazing advancements that come out of it, and we have an example of it right here on stage. So thank you guys so much for coming. Think about Israel. There's 8.5 million people that live in Israel approximately. And if you think about the number of companies listed on the NASDAQ, Israel has the most companies out of any other country outside of the United States and China and the entire world. It's truly remarkable. And Congress plays a direct role in that. How many, just out of curiosity, how many of you were here at Policy Conference 4 years ago? Wow, a lot of you. So, 4 years ago, we passed the U.S.-Israel Strategic Partnership Act. And it highlights the cooperation between the U.S. and Israel in the areas of energy, cyber, space, and water. We really focus on increasing that collaboration. It's exactly what that legislation does, because it really focuses on the advancement in all these different technologies that benefit American lives and the American economy. And we continue to do that at AIPAC, and we continue to work with Congress to make that happen, and we have an example of that right here on stage. So I'm going to do the introduction. I'm not going to try to explain the company. That's your jobs. So let me just read the bios now, and then we'll get started. So Dr. Milstein co-founded StemRad in November 2011 and has been leading R&D efforts ever since. Oren was appointed CEO in February 2016. He was an EMBO fellow at NYU Skirball Institute of Biomolecular Medicine, where his research provided basic insights into the mechanism of T-cell activation. As an NIAH fellow at the Scripps Research Institute, he discovered a novel mechanism for iron deficiency anemia. Dr. Milstein received his PhD from the Weizmann Institute of Science in 2008, where he developed novel strategies for successful bone marrow transplantation into irradiated subjects. And Tamar Nix, Director of Product Management of StemRad, currently oversees product design, manufacturing, and export, and is deeply involved in the R&D of StemRad's expanding product pipeline. She's the owner of Tamar Nix Design Studio, specializing in soft products. And Tamar also teaches design disciplines at professional schools. Tamar has a Bachelor of Design degree in textile design from Schenker College of Engineering and Design, where she graduated cum laude. Tamar also has a master's degree in industrial design from the Technion Israel Institute of Technology, where she studied advanced topics in design management. Impressive. Very impressive.
Thank you for having us here.
So first and foremost, tell us a little bit about the company and the product you guys have.
So thank you, Aaron. So the company is called StemRad. It's based out of Tel Aviv, out of the startup area of Ramat HaChayal. It was founded in 2011 following the Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan during the tsunami there in 2011. That was the trigger for founding the company, because then we realized that there's a real market for personal gamma protection. We went on to develop the StemRad 360 gamma belt that is laying here on the floor. And that evolved into a solution for space. If Anastasia will stand up, you'll be able to see that's a model of the Ashrad radiation vest to protect the astronauts venturing into deep space. So from a solution that had to do specifically with nuclear events, the company has evolved into space exploration, and now even into medicine, where we're working with physicians in hospitals throughout the US on a novel solution for X-ray radiation. So what we're seeing here is kind of like a platform technology, and any healthy company should have that kind of a platform to build a whole pipeline of products upon, not just to be focused on one single product, and that's what we're trying to do.
Is this unlike anything else in the market right now? Like, tell us a little bit how you came up with the idea.
Right, so this all began during my PhD with the Weizmann Institute that you mentioned when you introduced me. Basically, almost a chance observation where a very small fraction of bone marrow turned out to be sufficient to save the lives of irradiated mice through transplantation. And having seen that, then I said that, well, that won't work for in a mass casualty event where you have firefighters coming out or, God forbid, civilians exposed to a nuclear bomb. So looking at mass casualty events, the only true form of protection that is available is personal protection, such as the gas masks that were handed out to the residents of Israel in 1991. So I strived to make a product out of it, and I told myself, well, if such a small fraction of the bone marrow is enough via transplantation, so it should be enough if you shield it in your own body in situ and serve basically as your own donor. And I tested that thesis, and it turned out to be correct. And the survival rates of the animal model that I studied was just as high using my shielding approach as it is for transplantation, which was the state of the art until we invented our product. So I knew I had a winner. That said, I was not still sure I had a market. Regarding the market, I had the heritage of Chernobyl instilled in me. My PhD advisor, my professor, he was one of only 3 scientists, Western scientists, that were summoned into Chernobyl to treat the firefighters by the USSR back in the day. And he instilled in me the knowledge and you could say the trauma of Chernobyl. But in 2008, when I discovered my discovery, that was the last event involving acute exposures to radiation. There was nothing else since then. That was 1986, and I was in 2008. So I went on to do my postdoctoral studies in San Diego at Scripps. And I kept on thinking about the potential of this product should it be needed. But I didn't really do anything pragmatic about it until the tsunami hit the coast of Japan, demolishing the cooling systems for the reactors there, compelling first responders to go in to cool down the reactors in a way that was pretty similar and reminding me of the Chernobyl event that I was told of. And I was seeing it live this time, on TV, on the internet, and having to live with the knowledge that I have the knowledge to help these guys out. And they're going in without such equipment, without such protection. So that really stimulated me to found the company and basically to develop our first product, 360 Gamma.
That's pretty remarkable. It's very interesting. And Tamar, tell us a little bit about the design, because that's primarily, or that's at least one focus area that you work in, correct?
Yes, my role in the company is to take this amazing idea and turn it out to be a feasible product that you can touch, feel, wear comfortably, work with, and it's a big challenge, and we work with a large team on that. On each product, we have a team that develop it. So we made a lot of research of which materials we can work with. For example, that belt is 100% fire resistant, and finding those fabrics and those materials that we can work with, and we can make this garment out of them and maintain comfort. That's what was a long process. It always takes a long time until
Sure.
Yeah, it's kind of research and a trial and error. Actually, no one wrote any book of how to make radiation protection products, and it doesn't exist in the literature. So we just try and make another mock-up and another mock-up, and until we get something that, okay, this is it, this is comfortable, we can wear it, we can work with it. It's an object of desire for its own market. The firefighters, they like the look of it. It's also part of the issue. Products should look well, either it's for the firefighters or for the space industry or for any other use. The users has to know we thought of them, we answer their needs, and also not only the usability needs, also how it looks. So we handle all the different angles of the product. It's a whole interesting, challenging process.
How many different times did you come up with different models of this? You said it was a long process. of how you finally came up with this model?
Yeah, at the beginning there was the conceptual part of how to solve this issue of protecting the pelvic area in what is inside. It's a special technology. I cannot tell much about it, but how to solve the protection. It's more technical issue, but it is also a design problem. And then how to make a garment out of it. Mm-hmm. So we made, I don't know how many, but you remember, Oren, how many prototype went through this process? Maybe more than 10?
At least 4 that I remember, but
no, there was in between. There was in between much more. So above 10 iterations.
Sure. So I think you two are in a unique position to answer this question. Israel's known as a startup nation, and I'm just curious. You know, Israel, it's 70 years old, and it has more companies on the NASDAQ than any other country in the world. Like I mentioned earlier, why do you think this is? Why is Israel the startup nation?
Oren has a nice answer for that, I think.
I think really necessity is really the mother of all invention, as they say here in America. And it holds especially true for a country surrounded with enemies, with a founding history basically rooted in the Holocaust. So you really, you know, there's a saying in Hebrew saying, Im en ani li mili. Okay, so if I don't care for myself, if I don't try to fix a situation, nobody will. So it's really in the heritage of the reason why Israel exists.
And maybe just to add to that as well, can you talk about the diversity in innovation? You know, a policy conference every year, we have a showcase of so many different types of innovations and companies that come forward. And for me personally, it's just amazing to see all the different types. It's remarkable. Can you speak to why there's also so much diversity in the innovation coming out of Israel?
I think the Israeli is not limited in the scope of the way of thinking. You know, just wherever there's a problem, be it in software, be it in defense, he finds a way. I think that really characterizes the Israeli innovator. Yes.
Sure. So, as I understand it, you have a pretty interesting partnership with Lockheed Martin and NASA, and you're getting into space exploration as one of the methods that this vest is being used. Can you talk about how you guys met and how that partnership started?
So actually I was just sitting in my office and I was looking through my email and I saw a solicitation by the Israeli chief scientist for any kind of Israeli company, startups mostly, that would be interested in teaming up with a Florida-based company for developing a solution for space. And they listed satellites and things that had nothing to do with astronauts. But I went anyway, feeling that if I found the right partner there, we'd make it work. So I went there with my CTO, and there we met with representatives of the Office of the Chief Scientist of Israel, together with reps from Space Florida, so the equivalent organization, only on the Florida side. And they asked me if we wouldn't mind that folks from Lockheed Martin join the meeting. And so I made the call that no, I wouldn't mind. And 2 VPs joined the meeting. And then I knew I need to give my elevator pitch about how I think this technology can be applicable to astronauts venturing into deep space. And I spread out my ideas, and they loved it to the point where we shook hands then and there. We're going to do this amazing collaboration. Yeah, on the spot. On the spot, we're going to do this collaboration. And then we applied for funding, and we got the funding. And then it rolled into a second year of funding. And eventually, now we're like almost 3 years after, we have a functional prototype, and we're already manufacturing the first product.
Can you speak a little bit more to the implications that this has for future missions, why it's so important for NASA to have this technology, and where it can lead?
So specifically for Lockheed Martin, it was so important because they are the prime contractors for producing the Orion vehicle, which is NASA's next generation vehicle to take people back to deep space for the first time since the Apollo missions. and they're manufacturing this vehicle. They got a $19 billion contract, okay? And they don't know what to do with the maybe most daunting issue of radiation. Walks in this Israeli company with an idea.
Yeah.
They say, we'll give it a shot. And indeed, now I'm proud to say our product, the Astronaut Vest, is an enabler of human deep space exploration that will enable visitation of Moon within a few years and eventually, hopefully, all the way to Mars.
That's remarkable. That's incredible. So I'm sure as I look out in the audience, I'm sure there's many folks that work in business, probably some entrepreneurs out here. Can you talk about a little bit about what it's like as an Israeli company working with an American company and vice versa?
Tamar should take that.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting process because there is a kind of culture gap. Of course, we all speaking English and we learn how to work together, but there are some issues that the Israeli attitude is more, okay, we have an idea, we have a concept how to solve a problem, let's try it, let's do it. Let's take materials, let's 3D print it, let's do it and see how it works and test it. And I feel that our partners in that process, in that journey, they would like more to learn, to research the concept before to implement it. We run to implement every single idea. And I think maybe this is part of what makes this process work so nicely, that each one bring his own angle. We rush to try everything, and they research it, and we together, of course. And so it makes us move forward much faster.
Okay. Talk about, as you've been developing this company, what have some of the greatest challenges been that you guys have faced? I mean, everything sounds so glamorous, so amazing. What are some of the challenges you guys have faced?
I think when we had just this solution, which is basically a solution for a very bad day that doesn't happen often, then, okay, if you're just a few days or weeks or even a year or two after the last major event like Fukushima, then everybody's buying and no problem, wanting to work with you. But as time passes on, then people tend to forget that such an event can happen, indeed can happen, and will happen again. So just to keep them, the level of vigilance high among stakeholders is a challenge, because they tend to say, oh, okay, it happened there, it won't happen again. But now that we're dealing with other solutions, such as space, where radiation in space is a fact, it's not going to go away anytime soon. So there's no argument as to why you would need it. Same goes for the medical practice, where we're being exposed daily in interventional radiology. So those are easier markets to penetrate. So the great challenge with this, I think this is our most important product. But people tend to be complacent and think, okay, let's deal with the day-to-day stuff. And then when, so to speak, the shit hits the fan, it's too late to buy this. So.
Right. So then on the flip side, what would be your greatest triumph? What was some of the more miraculous moments?
I think we had quite a few of those. This, I think, is one of the big moments.
AIPAC stage?
Being on the big stage. Being here with you guys is just amazing. But come to think of it, I think our first sale of this, and specifically our first client, which happened to be my dream client in Israel for this solution, that kept me up at night to think that they wouldn't have this solution. And then when they had it, and when the people that I worked with were protected, I could sleep better at night. That was one big thing. The other big thing is just really from a few weeks ago, where, or rather months ago, the collaboration with NASA, that it's been finally approved, and that our product is officially manifested on the Orion capsule around the moon to be sent in 2019. So just to have a product manifested on NASA's flagship, and as far as I'm concerned, it's mankind's flagship. And
sure.
To be on there is an amazing feeling.
Sure. Tamar, how about yourself? Do you have any miraculous moments that you can think of with your time in the company?
Where there were a few, as I told you, we made for each product a lot of iterations, so each time it doesn't work. It's not easy, and it doesn't work in the first or in the second time. And when we have this idea and we know we want to see it in the market, we want it to work, and it's not there yet, it requires a lot of patience, and it's not easy. That process, which is frustrating. Of course, at this phase, we are very, very satisfied of what we achieved.
Sure. Well, I'll ask one more question, and then I've been asked to give half of the session, at least the time allotted for question and answer, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions out there. So I'll end on this one. With everybody that came to this breakout session, can you give them sort of an inside scoop into what does the future look like for your company? What's your plan moving forward, and what other innovations can we see from both of you?
You know, the landscape of innovation in Israel, the end game is usually to be bought out, okay, to exit and to move on. StemRad is a different beast. We don't want to be bought out, okay? Of course, there's a number where you can't refuse, but our idea, we want to manufacture in Israel like we're manufacturing today. We want to build an industry in Israel to safeguard the world from radiation. And we want to employ not tens, not hundreds, but thousands of people in this industry. And that's the horizon, if I could choose, for StemRad. That's where I would take it.
Very nice. So do we have a microphone for everybody? Okay, perfect. So there's a microphone right over there, the girl in the orange lanyard, blue shirt. Okay. Please try to keep your questions to actually questions and not statements. It'll help things move quickly, and then everybody can get as many questions as possible. So right over here? Okay.
Okay. Hi, could you just clarify for me a little bit more? You're talking about marrow protection, basically. What about heart, lung, brain, and the rest of your body? You wearing a belt? How does that work?
Yeah, a very good question. I'm sorry that we didn't go into the science in detail. I spoke about the science on the big stage just this morning, but as far as your question, it's a very good question. So this product basically safeguards the bone marrow and other vital organs within the vicinity of the pelvic region. As you say, heart, brain are not protected. So the problem with gamma radiation is they have to have tremendous mass to block it. There's no magic here. And should you attempt to protect all of your body with that mass, it would weigh 1/4 of a ton at least. So you're looking at basically choosing the best possible outcome with a mass that is bearable for the first responder, that does not limit the mobility. And we found the mass to be about 30 pounds, okay? And focusing all of those 30 pounds on the most sensitive organ in the body, being the bone marrow. And this organ is by far and away the most sensitive organ, to the point where all of the Chernobyl firefighters, they died because of bone marrow failure, not from anything else. So by safeguarding the bone marrow, you're preventing all of the acute deaths. So deaths within 4 weeks are completely not going to happen, okay? But looking 20 years down the road, it's a shame we couldn't prevent any complications with other organs, which we're not. So the lungs are exposed with this product. So 20 years down the road, you would have a higher likelihood of lung cancer, but not an extremely higher, a somewhat higher. That's not something we can deal with given the confines of Earth and the gravity existing here. But looking in space, if Anastasia can stand up, we can see that we're covering a lot more. And she's just wearing a faux mock-up that weighs maybe 10 pounds. The actual product is going to weigh 57 pounds. Now, how's that going to work? Well, in outer space, you don't have any gravity, so mass is not an issue. So in that circumstance, we elect to do what we can to protect as many organs as possible. And we're eliminating not only the likelihood of the acute death with this solution, but diminishing dramatically the likelihood of cancer even 20 years after the return from Mars. through selecting selective protection not only on the bone marrow, but also on the ovaries, also on the breast, also on the stomach, and on the lungs in this case. So really a great solution. The only problem with 57 pounds is to get it to space, to outer space. You're looking at about $20,000 per pound in the cost of fuel to send it into space. That's why we're working with our partners and also with NASA to find a way to print a lot of this mass in space using 3D printers that would take packaging materials that is really abundant in spacecrafts, recycle it, and print the actual radiation shielding material on board in space, thereby reducing the payload and saving NASA a lot of money. I hope that answers your question.
By the way, I have to say wow to that last response. I applaud the fact that you talked about manufacturing and continuing to manufacture in Israel, but that does not seem to be the standard. And sure, you know, these high-tech companies will sell out for $1 billion or billions of dollars. Not even that money necessarily stays in Israel because you have many foreign investors. So what can be done to encourage more of these high-tech companies, innovative companies, to continue to manufacture in Israel?
Yeah, that's another very good question. So manufacturing in Israel, unfortunately, is very expensive. So when you look at the consumer market where the margins are small, it just doesn't pay off. So you move manufacturing once you reach a certain level, a scale, you go to China. But when you're talking about high-end products such as our solutions, then the margin is fairly high, so you can afford to manufacture in Israel. Now, should we ever want to sell to consumers en masse and at a low price point, then we too will be compelled, at least the consumer segment of our company, to do overseas in cheaper markets. So what can we do to increase manufacturing? I think government subsidies would be probably the only viable route. But that said, you touched upon the whole culture of selling companies for $1 billion or $2 billion and like saving the day in Israel, and then a year elapses and your history and nobody knows about you anymore. So that's, in my opinion, that's unfortunate. And I think it finds its roots in the transient nature of Israeli culture. We haven't yet come to realize that we're here to stay. We're not going anywhere. And we need to provide jobs not for me, but for my children and for my grandchildren. And adopt an American state of mind. And I hope we're getting there.
I would like to add something about this issue is that in Israel, I don't know if it's a fortune or unfortunate that we have a great industry for protective equipment, especially for army needs. And we are lucky to enjoy this knowledge of high-quality production processes of this kind of gear. And this is also a good reason to stay us working in Israel.
Hi, I understand that you have a partnership here in the U.S. I just want to know if you could elaborate on how you came about to find that partnership and how we can implement more of those types of partnerships in our country.
Right, so I think indirectly, probably AIPAC had an amazing role in making this happen. There are several grants that are handed out to companies that are doing R&D as long as they find a partner overseas. So Israeli companies would be eligible for such grants should they collaborate with American companies. And any lobbying efforts towards increasing these grants would increase the number of partnerships. And these partnerships really increase the friendship between our peoples for sure. I feel like some of my best friends now in the world are in the Denver headquarters of Lockheed Martin, and this is really due to such grants and efforts. So thank you.
I'd like to add to that point as well, because right now you have the U.S.-Israel Center of Excellence in Energy and Water. You have the Byrd Foundation that works with industrial building, R&D, and procurement. You have BARD Foundation, which deals with agriculture. This all really stemmed from, and not necessarily always stemmed from, but expanded from what we lobbied on 4 years ago. And it's important that we continue to message to Congress how important these initiatives are, because it could land someone on Mars in this case. It could come up with so many different other innovations in water and energy. We see it in solar. We see it in wastewater management. The list goes on and on. The advances are only growing, and the applicability comes in so many different manners. It affects so many different lives. It affects the economy. And quite frankly, for all of you out here that come to Policy Conference, that invest in AIPAC, it makes all the difference. So really, we should be saying thank you to all of you as well, because you all make this happen.
Hi, my question is that since, based on foreign sources, allegedly Israel has nuclear capabilities, I'm just curious if the Israeli government is a client of yours. Is it somebody that is buying from you as well? Is it investing in the company as well as a consumer?
Yeah, so if we have or we don't have, it has nothing to do with Israel preparing for if Iran has or doesn't have, okay? So Israel is preparing for terrorists that would be harboring radioactive materials towards harming our civilians. Israel is preparing for attacks on its reactors by Scud missiles, Qassam rockets from Gaza. And Israel is a client of ours, of course. Yeah, a very important client.
So y'all obviously are very bright individuals, and like the generation behind me, that generation is brighter than I am, and I anticipate that the generation behind you is going to be likewise even brighter. What does your company offer to the next generation, so to speak, in terms of internships or opportunities or engagement in that factor, in that aspect?
Yeah, so actually our company really tries hard to integrate younger people. Actually, it's not for the benefit of the good or of the people. It's more for the benefit of the company. We find that when we have young people involved, there's a lot more passion, a lot more hunger to work. So, for example, we have interns every summer joining us. Even one of our individuals even graduated with a PhD during his stay at StemRad, with his thesis being written on our solutions. So we encourage people to go in and study while they work. So yeah, I definitely agree that involving the younger generation is essential, not only for them, but also for us.
Yes, my name is Shula Romano Horin. I want to say I'm very proud of you, really, for leading. I'm Israeli, and I'm for leading innovation and thinking outside the box. And as you mentioned, for trying to do things instead of only thinking, hesitating, calculating, simply going for it. And thank God that Israel has this chutzpah to go forward, you know? But I want to ask you, the tax reform by President Trump of lowering to 21%, will it affect innovation in Israel because the corporate tax went so down, or is there still advantages for Israeli companies to really innovate from Israel and not to be tempted to come to the United States?
Thank you for your encouragement, and it's definitely a good question. I don't see it impacting the landscape as far as my understanding, just because the sheer talent of the Israelis, the young Israelis, when it comes to high tech is astounding and unique on a world level. And the companies, big companies like Amazon and Facebook and Apple, they're beginning, or they have been already for years, doing most of their high-end R&D in Israel. Another factor is that still the cost of labor in Israel is substantially lower than in Silicon Valley. So there are many reasons to do high tech in Israel, even though the landscape here in America is changing as well.
Okay. How many people are in your company? Can you tell us how many are in the manufacturing end, the R&D end, and the other question is, could this be produced by robotics?
Okay, thank you. So our company takes pride in trying to be as lean as possible by employing subcontractors for anything that we don't have to keep in-house. And in doing so, we usually achieve a higher quality product. So our manufacturing is not in-house. We have 2 assembly lines in Israel and 1 that we're building now in Tampa, actually. And these are not part of our company per se. So as far as the number of employees, we're just in the tens, okay, in the few tens of employees, and mostly focused on R&D still, just now starting to get into sales through our U.S. subsidiary in Tampa. As far as robotics, we're looking forward to doing robotics in space, because once we have that 3D printer up and running within, let's say, the Deep Space Gateway circulating the moon, which is the next-gen International Space Station, then it wouldn't be manned at all times. So for whenever it's not manned, you want like a robot to harvest that printed material. And we're actually beginning studies on that as well. So that would be the future of robotics in our world. So.
Any more questions? Last chance.
So the future for Tamar, for your company and what you see in the future, I don't think you got to say too much about that.
About what again?
We heard what is in store for your company. So how about Tamar sitting next to you? What's in the future for your company?
I'm part of StemRad, so the future of StemRad is my future as well.
Sorry, I was off on the cloth and design part of it, so thank you.
Hi. Just curious if there, for Oren specifically, with your medical background, I'm not exactly sure if I missed some of your bio, but is there a lot of support in the technology communities and cross-platforms where you have other entrepreneurs that are inspirational? Can you talk about any of them and how they've helped you?
So if you could just repeat that question, I wasn't sure I got it.
So are there other entrepreneurs in different platforms in different industries within Israel, though, that are helping you in the process as you're getting started? That's really when you were starting up.
So actually, our first investor was an Israeli VC fund that invested shortly after Fukushima. And we had several angel investors coming out of the community in Israel. As far as working with other entrepreneurs within Israel for this, I have to say we're somewhat of an outlier in the high-tech industry. We're not doing software. We're not doing computers. So the overlap was not very high. We had mostly, I'd say, fruitful collaborations with the military, with the authorities in Israel, less with entrepreneurs, so to speak. Yeah.
I'm sitting here Googling you as you're speaking, and I noticed that one of your investors is one of the owners of a National Hockey League franchise. I'm wondering if there's any vision or any possibility that you'll expand your PPE methods for concussion protocol in sports and things of that nature. You seem to be able to have the technology to do just about everything, and that's a hot topic here in the States with football players and hockey players and the like. I was just wondering if that's a natural progression for you.
So actually, yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So it's very dear to us, the safety of professional athletes. And we find that collaborating with professional teams on the topic of safety is something worthwhile. And we have an initiative together with the Lightning, owned by one of our lead investors, to highlight, to have special events where safety is highlighted, be it the safety of the first responder, the astronaut, or the professional athlete. But it's more at the educational level. At the technology level, we haven't thought about entering that realm, but who knows what the future holds for us.
Yeah, I was wondering if you've also thought about physical security against other types of radiation like electromagnetic pulse.
So there was at some point that we thought about doing radiation hardening of electrical components, but it was just too far away from our theme of wearable solutions. So one thing about startups is you gotta stay focused on one hand. On the other hand, I may contradict myself by what did I just say at the beginning of this talk? You have to have a pipeline. Okay, so how do you have a pipeline but still stay focused? So I think that it's really a slippery slope that you have to be careful, you know, expanding your pipeline not to go into an area where you're not a leader.
I think this is more of a Tamar question. If Anastasia stands up, there are certain designs like the ribs. Is that a design? Is that an aesthetic choice? Is the color an aesthetic choice? Is there some function to those? And then the third aspect of it, how do you make them at an affordable and yet fit different sized people? Because you're going to be servicing numerous sizes, and I don't think elastic is going to be that protective a material for you.
Well, you asked two great questions. So first of all, the aesthetic is not the first aspect that we are looking for in our products. We first make them work and functional, and the aesthetics comes from that. So the lines that you see on the vest that Anastasia is wearing are yeah, the differential thickness is according to the different sensitivity of the organs to the radiation. From that, the lines are marked. It's not a design, aesthetic issue, it's functional. It happens to look very interesting because our internal body is very interesting, also in the aesthetic way, but first of all, it's functional. And the issue of the measures, it's a big challenge. In the belt, we faced it with making 8 different sizes for different people, but in the space, it will be each product will fit probably specific astronaut, but remember, it's not such a big market, so we are willing to face that challenge or a personal fitting of the product. And you were very correct with asking about the flexibility, vice versa, the protection. This piece, Anastasia, can you please show that model? Can you please show the flexibility of that? Yeah, this made of very dense polymer, and yet it maintained flexibility. And this is a great invention of that process of how to make rigid material flexible as fabric. So this is the way we are solving it. You can see it here.
Any other questions?
Hi. You mentioned briefly about use in medical, like radiology, that kind of stuff. Can you comment a little bit on that? Do you have any plans to go forward in that arena?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, so that's a product in our pipeline. It's being dubbed the StemRad MD, made specifically for physicians toiling under the weight of their X-ray gowns that are really clunky and haven't really evolved much in the past 60 years or so. So we're making something lightweight, ergonomic, and more protective. And it's going to be out in about a year.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed the program, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.